It's time to talk fantasy football. It's time to let 'em know. Where you let us crunch the numbers while you crush the competition. So grab your playbooks and crack a cold one, because here's your hosts, Teak and Baney.
Welcome back, guys, to another episode of the podcast. I'm your host, Teak, here again with the Badger and Baney, here to talk about Week 6 sits. Little tongue twister for you, if you can say that. You know the drill. We're going to go around the horn. Baney's going to start us off with the QBs and go.
Alrighty, we're going. Baker Mayfield. That's my sit this week. Has nothing to do with Baker or the wide receivers. Has everything to do with this Lions defense. They're smothering, man. 8 turnovers, 14 sacks in 5 games. They're also giving up only 68 yards to the rush. So I don't think Rachaad White's going to be able to get it going, and I think that Baker's going to struggle. I think Aiden Hutchinson's going to be doing his sack dance. It's gonna be a brutal game this week, I think. So Baker Mayfield, that's my sit.
Yeah, I mean, tough matchup. Lions defense, I think, is underrated, and they're starting to come alive. I mean, Aiden, he's causing some problems. So, yeah, I don't hate the sit. Baker has been a game manager. I mean, he's put a respectable 20 points. So, but I think it's going to start to come down a little bit here. I love his energy. I like Baker in Tampa, not in Cleveland. But yeah, I don't hate the sit. Detroit defense.
Yeah, just to go off Detroit's defense, I know in my dad's league, it's ran a little bit different for defenses. I know every point that's scored on you is a point minus on your defense. So if some team puts up 40 on your defense, that's negative 40 on you. So that being said, I had the Lions defense and I got laughed at this year, along with the Falcons. Everybody was making fun of my 2 picks, and now they're looking pretty good. And nothing against Baker. We got to give Baker his flowers. He's been looking pretty good as well. But is it time that Baker slows his roll? It might be this week.
Those defenses, both you named, Falcons and Lions, underrated.
But moving on to your QB badge.
So my QB, I feel like I'm robbing you guys, but I got to say Deshaun Watson. The 49ers defense is absolutely dominant. I mean, this team looks like nobody can do anything against them. They shut down the Cowboys offense, which they have a lot of playmakers. I know Dak gets a lot of shade. This offense can put points up, though. So, I mean, this Niners D is just I'm sitting any quarterback I think that plays against him. I don't care who it is. I may even sit Mahomes, not really, but this defense is stout. So I'm sitting Deshaun Watson. Again, I'm sorry for robbing you guys. Hopefully these guys can help you out and give us something better.
I'm on the same boat. I got Deshaun Watson as well. This Niner defense shown week in, week out, they're the best in the NFL. So I'm not going to be the one to go against it either. Watson coming off an injury against this front for the Niners, it's ridiculous. I think a prop bet should be placed though for Watson for his rushing yards this week, because he's going to be running a lot away from this defense. Um, Depending on where that prop bet's lying at, but I like the over on the rushing yards there.
2 things. One, I can't stand Watson. I think that he was cleared to play last week. He just chose not to play. He hasn't practiced with the team this week. They say he's just been doing like inside studies, whatever. If he doesn't play this week, we're having a big conversation about Watson moving forward, because this is ridiculous. They pay this guy incredible amount of money, and he's been on our sits list 2-3 times now. Just not productive.
We dodged a bullet.
Yeah, you did. Atlanta Falcons fans should be rejoicing for sure. That being said, look at the 49ers upcoming schedule and tell me where they lose. Tell me if they lose a game this year. I don't think they will. Honestly, I can't find a loss on their schedule unless they sit everybody in the last 2 weeks because they have a cakewalk to the division. I don't know, man.
Does
49ers value is
does
crazy.
pride get in the way and the players want to play that out though?
Do you guys think, real quick, are they gonna go for the Dolphins' undefeated season record, going all the way?
I don't know. It's not even like it's really like that's the topic of conversation. I think it's just like this offense is just unbeatable, and the defense is just. I mean, everybody wants to talk about CMC and everybody, but like, can we talk about maybe Fred Warner being
Yeah.
one of the best players on their team?
I
Maybe
don't.
the
I,
best player on their
How
I
team.
about
don't
how
see
about
a
Like,
weakness.
I'll
I
go
do
one
not
step
see a
further.
weakness.
How about in the league? He's
dude,
just as a
Fred Warner is
playmaker.
elite.
He's just as a playmaker as TJ Watt. He's just as a playmaker as I know Miles Garrett's getting thrown around now too. Um, he's up there, dude. So this defense, and I believe should be the year. If this ain't the year for them, they're gonna have to regroup because they're over the cap big time. So pieces are gonna go next year. So hopefully they can get it done this year.
I see a ring. I don't see a weakness. I do not see a weakness in this team whatsoever.
Oh,
Now when Purdy's putting up MVP numbers and it just gets
hasn't thrown.
better every week.
I don't think he's thrown a pick yet either, has he? So
I
No,
don't think so.
he hasn't even lost yet since he started last year.
moving on to the running backs, Manny. Who do you got at the running back
Yeah.
position?
So it's a vague one, but I think it's the correct one, and it is Ravens running backs. Their production's solely based on touchdowns, and they're not getting that because Lamar's getting them. Lamar has 4 rushing touchdowns, and he's their leading rusher on the season. Um, it's another overseas game. The under is hit in both those games. There hasn't been a ton of points. Hasn't been a lot of fun to watch. I know ETN kind of had a big game. Um, that being said, I don't know, man. One of these guys, I'm sure, are going to have a huge fantasy week. Odds are you're not going to play the right guy. So I would just go tinker on that waiver wire, man. Get a Jaleel McLaughlin. Get yourself Emery. I'm not going to butcher your last name. I'm sorry. Cardinals running back that's going to be filling in for James Conner the next 4 weeks. Get one of those guys. Pick up Jeff Wilson. Feel decent about it. Don't mess with Justice Hill and all these guys. The Gus Bus. Just bait it. Let it be somebody else's problem. So Badge.
Baney, you nailed it. Matchup nightmare. Ain't starting any running backs for the Ravens. Shout out last week. My Pittsburgh Steelers got him. Matt Canada, get the hell out. Anyways, yeah, Titans, one of the best in stopping the run, one of the worst in stopping the pass. Lamar's their top running back. I'm not starting Hill. I'm not starting any of those guys in the backfield. Great sit. Teak.
Yeah, I believe was it last week I had the Ravens running back room or the week before? I don't remember. Just for that reason, it's Lamar Jackson hawks those possessions. Like Baney said, they're touchdown based and they haven't seen those whatsoever. Um, I always stay away from Baltimore running backs. That's just my rule of thumb, and it's been paying off for me.
Absolutely.
But Badge, moving on to your running back.
So my sit-em running back, Damian Pierce against the Saints. So this Saints defense just laid it on the Pats in their own house, in Belichick's house. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Belichick has a lot of work cut out for him, but anyways, that's beside the point. This Saints defense is absolutely stout. The run defense is real. The pass defense is real. They shut down everybody, every aspect of the game. CJ Stroud, I'm a big fan, but you have your work cut out this week. So the run game's going to be out the window. I'm sitting Damian Pierce this week.
Yeah, that's consistent with every show that I've heard or listened to as well. Um, yeah, it's not breaking news. He's not having a good year, and it's unfortunate because he was a guy that a lot of people were banging the drum for. And he's talented. He's good. That being said, I think the Saints defense is going to be they're going to be fighting for yards this week, and it's going to be tough. Definitely not a good start. So, Badge, I agree.
Yeah, and it stinks because I do like Dameon Pierce a lot. He's just not a catching back either, which hinders his fantasy output. He's just not. Uh, so if they're down in games, you might as well just whatever he's sitting at for that week, that's what he's gonna be sitting at during the game because they're tossing that ball around. If say they're down big, he ain't gonna be out there. So I like to sit as well.
Yeah, I think too. Last year he had a good year with Davis Mills, but I think that's all they had was just giving Pierce the rock. I mean, he's very talented, but I do not like the matchup.
But for my running back here, I'm gonna follow suit with my first pick. I know a lot of people who took their free agent budget and threw it all on this guy, and it's Jerome Ford. Coming off a terrible week 4 against the Ravens, it doesn't get much easier with the Niners here. We said everything we had to say about the Niners with our sit-em for the QB. This front seven or what, it's ridiculous. So I'm sitting Jerome Ford this week.
He's projected like 13 fantasy points, and I think that's like 8 too high this week. I mean, this is a brutal defense to go up against. Yeah, I can't see a week or a scenario where he is valuable this week at all. We're sitting Watson. I think his production directly affects Ford's production, and there's going to be no production this week against the 49ers. So definitely a good sit.
Yeah, I mean, great sit. We just touched on him. This 49er defense is elite. So, I mean, anyone outside of Cooper Kupp, because I think you have to start him in your lineup, I'm sitting everybody. So I'm definitely not touching anybody in DFS lineups. Ford, great sit. I mean, I have to start Ford in my 14-man league. Teek's a part of it. I don't have another choice. A couple bye weeks coming, but if you do not have the choice, do not start him. I mean, if you do have the choice, do not start him. So great sit, Teek.
All right, moving to the wide receivers.
Badge, you finally got me on board. You finally made me a fan. Finally made me a believer. And now I have to stop. Or now I have to sit him. Nico Collins. Yeah, man. Saints defense is good. It's just a trend on these sits. They allow under 200 yards passing. They have 9 turnovers, 11 sacks, and 2 defensive touchdowns so far. They don't allow a ton of points. And yeah, man, I know Teek's not a huge Lattimore fan, but Lattimore effect is real. I think Nico Collins is going to struggle this week. I really do. And I think this is going to be the first real challenge that CJ Stroud faces. I wouldn't be surprised if his interception streak ends this week. But Nico Collins, unfortunately, have to sit you. Probably not going to touch him in any DFS lineups as well. This matchup makes no sense. So, Badge.
Yeah, I mean, matchup nightmare. We touched on it. The Saints defense, they don't play. I think Stroud and that entire offense could struggle. I mean, outside of if they get in the red zone, getting a quick out or something, getting a touchdown. That's what, if you're starting him, that's what you got to bank on because he ain't going to have the big plays. I mean, they just laid an egg in Foxborough. I mean, when's the last time we said that against Belichick? This defense is legit. So, terrible matchup. Great sit. I agree completely. Teak?
It was the first time in Belichick's career with this actual starting quarterback at home that he's been goose egged. Yeah. That's a real stat. So
great, crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I like the start as well. I think you guys touched on everything I was going to touch on that part, so you guys covered it. But moving on to you, Badge.
So, Baney, I'm sorry you gave your bonus start. I got to give a little pushback here. I'm sorry. This is not payback for you sitting George Pickens last week, and we know what he did. It's not payback. I'm going strictly matchup. I gotta sit Devontae Smith. This Jets secondary, they shut down wide receivers. I mean, they got one of the best corners in the league. He'll probably be on AJ Brown, but last week they allowed 50 yards to wide receiver. I mean, that's it. I mean, I'm playing the matchup. I think the Eagles are going to win. I think Dallas Goedert's going to be the guy that has the day. Again, this is not payback for your sit last week, even though I want it to be. Just kidding. But yeah, I got to sit Devontae Smith this week against this Jets defense. Based on that.
I think you should want me to sit Steelers players because every time I do it, they go off. So you're welcome. Everything you saw, you're welcome. I did that.
And I believe we do have a little suggestion, take with what Baney has to do on camera.
Oh,
The gritty.
yeah. We got one of our viewers said you owe them an apology.
And you got to do the gritty.
I'm not sorry. What I said, direct quote, was I'm not fading his talent. I think he's a great player. We recorded before we knew who the quarterback was going to be. To be honest, if Kenny was playing, I still would have faded him. It just didn't make sense. But hey, if the Eagles win the Super Bowl this year, I'll do the gritty on camera for you guys.
Oh,
that's my.
He wants to see the gritty now. Any chance of doing that or no? Not this week. All right, we're gonna get him. We're gonna get him.
Not for you.
So he's gonna do the gritty.
We're gonna get a stunt double Barnett maybe to do it for him.
There we go.
Oh God.
Get him a black hat. We'll get after it. Get this back on track, guys. We're talking about Devontae Smith. I'm gonna push back on this for the one simple fact of if you've paid attention to Eagles games this year, AJ Brown throws a hissy fit. AJ Brown gets peppered with targets. Dallas Goedert's not happy with how things going. Pepper him with targets. Even the game before this, Dallas Goedert had 6 catches for 22 yards. They're giving him opportunities. I think that there's a scenario where Devontae gets probably 6 to 8 catches realistically in this game. Whether or not they go for a lot of distance, I don't know. The defense is real. They're legit. So he might have 6 to 8 catches, might only have 30 yards. I see a lot of bubble screens, a lot of targets in that. But yeah, Steelers fans, you should want me to sit all your players because when I put them on the list, they go crazy. So
I hope Devontae Smith is not a sit this week because I got some shares in him. And what I seen yet last week, thank God I did sit him. I actually did in one of my leagues. It was probably the toughest decision I've had. And it paid off, fortunately, but hopefully it's not a trend. But it is a tough matchup, but I don't know. It's a flip of a coin for me.
Yeah, and I took the Eagles as one of my best bets, -6. So if he goes off, I mean, I'll be happy. But I just don't like the matchup, how they give up 50 yards to a receiver, So there's a lot of mouths to feed over there in Philly. So I think they're gonna. That's what I'm basing off a matchup purely.
Spin zone for this, I definitely could see a game where the Eagles run the ball a lot, and maybe that does limit a lot of targets. So I honestly could see that being a scenario that plays out. However, I don't think he's going to repeat one catch for 6 yards. I don't think that that's going to happen.
Moving on to me here. This guy is going up against a Houston defense who held Michael Pittman, Christian Kirk, Calvin Ridley, and George Pickens to under 60 yards. And I got Michael Thomas. I sit him. I believe he's going to be on that same pace as these other wide receivers. The only reason I didn't pick Olave is I think they're going to pepper him this week because he had last week he had a poor week. So I think they're going to pepper him with targets, get him back on track. So I think Thomas is going to be the odd man out for this week.
Yeah, I also don't trust Carr's shoulder. that injury, AC joint is kind of a big deal when you're a quarterback and you have to use your shoulder. Don't love that. And again, that's why Kamara made both of our start lists. He's getting a ton of those dump off targets as well. Yeah, I mean, like you said, odd man out. Defense is smothering the wide receiver ones. Yeah, I see no issues with this. This is a good sit.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree too. Thomas, I mean, respectively, he puts up 10 points a week, so solid for where you got him at. He's doing what we thought he would. Kamara coming back, I think they're feeding him the rock a little more too. You got to get Olave the ball. I think Mike Thomas is he's gonna be an afterthought, you know. So yeah, that's a good sit this week, and I'm not fully sold on Carr. In this pass offense. When they do pass, they go to Kamara or Olave. So, yeah, I agree.
All right, wrapping up the last position here, the tight end position. Baney, what do you have here for us in week 6?
So I'm picking a guy that has got a lot of nice things said about him on this podcast. It's just really unfortunate. Tyler Higbee. Tight ends need targets. More specifically, they need red zone targets and touchdowns to be productive in fantasy. Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are target vacuums. They had 23 targets between the two of them last week. Stafford only threw the ball 37 times. So you do the math on that, but there's not a lot of leftover balls there for the tight end, especially when Tutu Atwell is, he's being impressive for a guy that really was just looked at as kind of like a deep threat a couple times a game, maybe. No, he's been really productive, really solid for them, and I think that's a great little trio there. I mean, we just saw the Falcons acquired Van Jefferson, so I still don't think that amounts to anything for Higbee. It's a guy that a lot of people were high on, but I think there's just not enough food to go around there. So, Badge, how do we feel?
Yeah, unless they get on the 5-yard line and Higbee gets a TD, I mean, I don't see much happening. I mean, we all saw Kupp. I wanted nothing to do with Kupp. I had trades offered, and I'm like, dude, the question marks were too high, but he looked good. So, him, Puka, I mean, and you mentioned Tutu as well. I don't see him looking his way much outside of the red zone. So yeah, he's going to be a sit until I see some action from him with these guys back and Cub healthy. So, Teak,
Even Kyron Williams has impressed me what he's done so far as well.
very impressive.
Tyler Higbee's also my sit as well. Like Benny said, there's too many mouths to feed, and Higbee is going to be the one starving. So unless they can find this guy some food stamps, this guy's going to be starving for week to week here.
Yep.
But Badge, to wrap it up, who's your sit-em tight end?
So my sit-em. First, I want to talk about. I must have jumped out my window. We were talking about Matt Canada last week and hit my head for starting Daniel Jones. So this is going to play off of a terrible start, by the way. Sorry, guys. If you listen to me, I apologize. This is going to play off of that. I don't know if Danny Dimes is playing this week, but my tight end sit him is Darren Waller. So he has much more talented defenses that shut him down. I mean, and he didn't do anything against this Dolphins defense. I mean, I think Buffalo, there's a lot of injury concerns on the D side, but I'm just not sold on this offense in New York yet. So sorry, Darren Waller, for the friendly fire here. I mean, you're a casualty of Daniel Dimes or whoever is going to start. Is it Tyrod Taylor, maybe? I don't know. But if he does start, I mean, I'm not sold on this guy. I'm not sold on the Giants offense. I'm sitting Darren Waller this week against the Bills.
I just want to say he actually had his best game against Miami.
Yeah, he had 80 yards. I just
Yeah.
got that.
But
But
that being said, he hasn't done nothing since that game. I don't know what the issue is there in New York whatsoever. They brought him in. Everybody was hyped up for Waller because he looked like to be the #1 receiving target there in New York. Everybody was hyping him up. They were actually putting him. I know a lot of people and fantasy guys were putting him in the top 3 tight ends, and they had that much faith in Daniel Jones. I don't know if it's a Daniel Jones issue. Is it a play calling issue? Is it the O line? Is it a mixture? I don't know. I don't like the offense altogether. I think when Barkley's not there, that whole offense goes out the door, and it shows it. And that's why you pay guys like that who can change what your offense looks like.
Yeah, I think even if Waller has a decent game, it's still not going to be enough to really like warrant where you drafted him. It's really a bummer. Like you said, Teak, I was going to say it. A lot of shows, a lot of credited people everywhere was banging that drum for Waller, possible tight end 3, 2. I've heard his injury history was enough for me not to want to touch him, and his lack of production on a team where he has nobody to compete with is just rough to really see, especially with Barkley out too. So it's not like he's losing targets to, a quality running back or anything. It's just a bummer. So yeah, they've given me no reason to believe. So I think this is a good sit.
Yeah, and again, I know he did have 80 yards out of the 120, I think. So he did have a decent game. So to touch on this, it was all friendly fire based on this offense. So it was nice to see Waller produce last game. But again, I hit my head with that Daniel Jones start, so I'm a little disoriented still on this offense. So I'm sitting him.
All right, and that wraps up our sits for week 6. Again, please, 60% of you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel. Please click that button below. It helps out tremendously. It is totally free. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcast and all socials. Instagram,
Thank you
X,
for listening to another
Facebook,
episode of the
you
Let
name
'Em
it,
Know
we're there.
Fantasy Football Podcast.
coming to
Join
a billboard
our
near
community
you.
and follow us on all socials or keep
Hit
up
that
with the
subscribe.
episodes on
Until
YouTube,
next time,
Spotify,
thanks for
or
tuning
Apple
in.
Podcasts.